I see her rolling up over black Cadillac, high heel boots, and a
But
sexy body full of tats.
all this talk about what we're going to do next time leads into the conversation I do want to have.
Yes.
Are sequels getting better or worse?
You want to go first?
No, you can go because I've been talking for a minute.
I'm going to say they're exactly the same. Because you were asking, like, compared to like 20, 30, 40 years ago, are they better now or better than yada yada? It's still it's the same thing. Is it's hit or miss. 40 years ago, some sequels are better than the original, some sequels are worse than the original. This year, some sequels are better than the original, some sequels are worse than the original. Like,
well, I don't
really
really mean
depends.
I don't mean in comparison to their previous movie. I mean eras compared. So like not as a sequel better than its predecessor. Are sequels better now or worse than they were 90 years ago? Say the difference between Terminator 2 and Prometheus.
But when you're comparing Terminator 2, you're comparing it to Terminator 1.
No, but I'm saying Terminator 2 as a sequel compared to, I said Prometheus because I was going to think of Covenant. So Alien Covenant. So is Alien Covenant a better sequel than Terminator 2 is a better sequel?
I don't know how you'd make that comparison. Just compare, because then you don't even have to say sequels. You could just say, is Aliens 1 better than Terminator 1?
Well, the reason I say it is because
the question feels it feels hard to answer. It's you're comparing fruits, but they're two different fruits. They're apples and oranges.
I don't think there's so much apples and oranges as, because I would say a sequel is generally apples and oranges to its predecessor.
Because let's say if you're going with that, then I can say, well, what about Alvin and the Chipmunks, Chipwrecked, the second one? Of course, that movie's not going to be as good as Terminator 2, but it has nothing to do with the fact that it's a sequel. It's just a shittier movie compared to Terminator 2.
Well, we also know that generally speaking, sequels tend to have a harder time than their initial release or their predecessor movie. A lot of times the sophomore effort is the harder one to get off, especially if we're doing trilogies. But but the question is, are they having a harder time now? Because we do have some pretty crappy sequels nowadays, like to big name movies.
I think it's nowadays it's more a quantity over quality when it comes to sequels. There's so fucking many out there.
Well,
like everything's getting a sequel.
But then
there's going to be more worse sequels now, so it's going to mess up the statistics.
So I mean that's actually a good point with it then, because everything does have to have its own cinematic universe, or everything has to be a trilogy now, versus back in the day you could get by with just a movie. Now the thing is it the second movie in a sequel series gonna always be the worst, or is sometimes the third one gonna be the worst, such as Star Wars?
Like if you're talking about movies that are set up to be, like if we're talking over time, movies that have been made that are purposefully have a sequel, either because it is a part 1 and part 2, or because it's a part of a trilogy, then statistically, I think the second one is usually better. Is when you first see them, everybody likes the first one better than the second one. And my thought on that is because it's something new and shiny. You don't know anything about this world. It's something new.
Okay.
And then the second one is just like, oh shit, it's a bunch more of the same stuff that we now saw from the first one. But when you've watched it more than one time, or in our case, as we've gotten older, it takes on more because you look at movies differently. Like one of the easiest ones to fall back on, I know it's talked about till, all day, every day, but Empire Strikes Back. When I was a kid, Return of the Jedi was my jam. You could not tell me Return of the Jedi wasn't the best Star Wars movie. I'd tell you to fuck off.
Which there's a good point for that, though. But there's a good point for that.
As an adult, Empire Strikes Back is way better than any of them that have come out before or since. It's the best one of the Star Wars movies.
Yeah. I agree.
Because we look at stuff differently as adults than we do as kids.
Well, of course, because Jedi was directed towards kids, whereas Empire was not. So that was a big thing. It's very, very much a kid's movie in general. It was very different vibes to the original one. But of course, we do know now, looking back at it, Empire made its fame well after it came out. It actually wasn't until many years later that it was seen as the superior movie.
Yeah.
When it came out, it bombed like hell, like in comparison. Because it didn't have the staying power or the amount of time invested that of course we got by the time Jedi came out. So, and then more people had time to watch it, and back then there were less movies to watch. So movies would return to theater maybe once a year in between sequels.
Right.
So they didn't have a singular run at the box office. They would come back later. So it could be that certain people didn't see it the first time, or that was when you first really got that repeatability with some time in between. And of course, home box office at that point, whenever you're things were coming out on Betamax or VHS initially, that's where Empire really took off. Whereas Return of the Jedi was probably a bigger movie by that point, because now the kids of the people who saw the original Star Wars were going to see the first Star Wars movie that, you know, it kind of did that. But that's also falling into, okay, for instance, like you just said, now you see Empire as the better sequel. But as a kid, you thought Jedi was a better sequel. Okay, so Back to the Future. What is the superior sequel in Back to the Future?
The first one's better.
So you're saying 2. 2's better than 3.
No. The first one's better.
No, I said, but which is a superior sequel?
Yeah. 2. Yeah, definitely 2.
So in
3 was such slop together trash. I mean, it's fun to watch. My kids love it. It's enjoyable popcorn fun, but it is not a good movie. I don't care what anybody says. It's the same movie, just with cowboy hats.
But see, to me, what's funny? Well, actually, all of them were the same movie over and over, which was funny. But like, I like 2 and 3 equally, but as a kid, I liked 2 more.
Yeah, I think
which is weird.
But to me, that makes more sense, because when I was a kid, 2 was the better one, and now looking back, 1 is the better one. But between the 2 sequels, 2 is still better. Yeah. But when we were kids, it's the flying car, man.
Yeah, it is.
It was the flying car that did it. That's why when we were kids, it was the fucking shit. It was the best one of all of them, because who the fuck cared about steam trains when we were kids? We didn't care about that shit.
Me, Thomas Tank Engine Kid here.
Yeah, I know.
That's why.
But you didn't care about it. You didn't care about it more than you did flying fucking cars.
Yes, but here's the thing. Trains are a real thing. Flying cars have yet to technically become a thing. So
exactly,
it's a realistic attempt, which is fun.
When you're a kid, the flying car is more sense, because kids live on their imagination. They don't care about what's really outside. They care about what they want to go out there and see outside. When you're a kid, you don't care that that's a pine tree and that's a bush. You care about that's indoor. But that's where I'm going to take my Ewoks and have the Battle of Endor at. You're not looking at it what it actually is.
But Ricky, flying train beats flying car.
No, it doesn't.
It does. Okay, so hold on. Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. And this is kind of what I'm talking about. So the movies we saw as kids, when sequels really first started becoming a thing, even trilogies started becoming a thing, realistically, the 80s is when that was really first happening. You know, compared to now, what are there as many memorable sequels now? Or is it because you said it's too diluted? Everything's a sequel.
That's the problem. Is there are memorable sequels, but when you've had 50 of them thrown at you, it's hard to. What's that one I was talking about? It was the one movie with the guy and the sword, and you're like, oh, it's this movie. I'm like, no, not that one. And you're like,
true.
Okay, well, then it's this movie. I'm like, no, not that one either. And I'm like, there's a guy, he has shoes and he has the hair and the face mask. You're like, no, this movie. I'm like, no, not that one either. But I've literally just described 6 different fucking movies that all line up exactly what I just talked about, and none of them were the ones that I was actually talking about, because it's a whole other fucking movie.
That's also very true. Okay,
it's just too many, and they're too paper cutter. It's a lot of the same shit. It's the same movie, just
I agree.
Reskinned.
That is
it's like, I love the Arkham Batman games we've talked about before.
Yeah.
But putting on a different skin in that makes Batman look different, makes him look cooler, but it's still the same exact fucking game. And that's how a lot of movies are nowadays. They can reskin it all the fuck they want to. It's the same fucking movie.
I'll tell you one franchise that sequels were never necessary, and they just completely destroyed it because of doing it.
I already know what you're going to say. What? Sharknado.
No, that was not what I was going to say. Not at all. Sharknado's got better over time. Come on.
I have the first 5 on DVD. I will gladly
those movies
that.
got... Okay, so I'll take it back. Okay, no, I'm not going to take it back. I'm going to go with my original thought. The Land Before Time. That got...
Oh, God.
dude,
They should have left it alone. That
they
was such
should
a
have left it
perfect
alone.
movie.
And this is my other point: is when are sequels wholly unnecessary versus are needed for storytelling? Because
Easy. If it's a back when we were kids, if it was direct to video or direct to DVD or now direct to a streaming platform for a sequel, it's unfucking necessary.
Well, okay.
If you don't have the balls to think that it's going to make money in the movie theater, then it's an unnecessary fucking story.
I agree. I actually do agree on that point because we do have a direct reference for that, and that's the Return of Jafar was straight to home video, but King of Thieves was back in theaters. So, but which was the superior sequel out of those two? Which one was
King of Thieves?
I would probably say that too because it was Sean Connery as a dad. But
the Return of Jafar was stupid. It was dumb.
It was. But I will also say that, off topic, the Aladdin series was superior to the movies, as it were.
Yeah.
Even though it was the same level of animation, which I think that's the only thing that held those particular sequels back, is they didn't bother with the actual budget. They had the TV show budget for the movies, and it was a bad fucking plan. Yep. At least they brought back Robin Williams for actual money in the third one, but
that is true.
You made a good point though. The straight to VHS or DVD sequels for any mainline Disney franchise from the 90s to the early 2000s, I would definitely agree that those were unnecessary because, I mean, King of Thieves technically finished out the Aladdin storyline, so I guess in theory that was necessary. But that was also the first time where they were playing it out through the cartoon series in between the movies. Yeah. So that was actually, it was technically, exactly. It was technically its own universe, which was interesting.
See, everybody's talking about Disney Plus and this Marvel Studios doing this with the MCU and the
it's not the first time this was done.
It's not their first time doing it. They did it back in the 90s with our cartoons. They're just revamped it into this. It's not something new. Everybody forgets about that. They did it. It wasn't just Aladdin. There was a lot of shit like that back then that did that.
Yeah.
That they would have a movie, and then in between the movies they'd have the shows, and then they'd put out another movie in that, and it would be connected through the show.
Like the Lion King and Timon and Pumbaa.
Yep.
That was terrible. Not gonna lie, the Timon and Pumbaa movie was worse.
It still fits. It doesn't have to be good.
But that's also
we have that now. We have shows now where they're like, the shows they fit in between the movies, and it does give us some shit. But who gives a fuck? It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
they do that now. It's not everything's gonna be a hit, but it's still the same.
It's true. But one thing I'll say that at least back in the day, outside of cartoons, probably, there was no extended continuity between multiple storylines. I think the Alien Predator franchise was the only time we were seeing crossovers between things like that, realistically. Like actual proper.
And even that wasn't until AVP.
But I mean, they had the reference in Predator 2 to aliens with the skull in the ship. So we knew that was the same universe, and then also technically speaking, Blade Runner is in that same universe as well. Because
you know why they had that nod in Predator 2? Because AVP comics had already happened.
Oh yeah. Well, the comics are a wholly different fucking thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm saying that, but it's still like we're talking about. There was something that was put on a movie, something put out that we could have at home that reconnected to a movie that was released later. It's still the same general process.
So
brass tacks and the same stuff.
So one reason it brought up this thought was, one, of course, because now we're getting sequel after sequel after sequel after sequel nowadays. But it was the Nerd Rage conversation when they brought up Alien, I believe it was last week or the week before, and Aliens, maybe it wasn't Nerd Rage.
Different movie.
So Alien and Aliens tied directly together.
That was Mike last week.
Okay. Oh, that's right. He did. But there was somewhere else that brought it up as well. But no, you're right. It was Mike. But that conversation mostly was cut by the glitching. Thanks, Discord. But the idea that the first two were definitely the superior out of that quadrilogy, at least of that run. And frankly, Resurrection never needed to happen. I would argue that 3 needed to happen just to wrap up that story, but it was definitely the weaker of the sequels.
I think the only reason why people hate 3 is because what they did to Newton, old Commander What's-His-Face.
I would argue that too. Just completely
if they
fucking
left
that
them
story.
in the movie or found a happy ending for them instead of killing them off screen. People
like the original story was supposed to happen, yes.
It just
Killing.
put a bad taste in everybody's
It's
mouth at the
true.
very beginning of that movie, and it just ruined the rest of the movie. That movie's not horrible. If you look at it just by itself, it's
Yeah.
not a bad movie.
Especially if you watch what is it, the direct? Which one has the proper alien in it? I forget. Where it's
I
the
don't know if
dog,
it's
not the
the
cow.
director's cut or the sub-director's cut or the
Yeah.
second release cut. I don't know. One of those
There,
crazy
there's
fucking
there's more
things.
context in one of the versions either way, but I would say that 3, even though here's the fucked up part. I saw Alien 3 almost when it was brand new, at least when it first dropped to VHS. You know, I was kind of old enough to be able to see that, and I rented it myself, but I hadn't seen Aliens yet. So I
See, I saw
started at
two. I
3.
saw 2 and 3 before I ever saw 1.
Yeah, and I don't think I've technically ever watched 1 all the way through. I've seen all the important shit. I know everything about it. I've just never watched. No, you know what? Oh, no, what? I've seen it in spurts. I've definitely
Right.
seen the end of it, and I've definitely seen the beginning of it. The middle was like the crazy part. But I
Gotcha.
mean, yes, and because they changed genres also really affected that. So that's one reason I think that sometimes sequels can fail, is because they actually change genres from movie to movie. Where Alien 1 was definitely suspense and more horror based, Alien 2
It's an
was an
space
action movie,
adventure.
and then 3 was somewhere in between. But it was like, it was really strange in that way. But I think that's where even today, we're like you were saying, that it's the same shit, different day almost. So look at the Thor movies, for instance. So Thor 1, straight up superhero origin movie, more or less. A good fish out of water story, essentially, how you always got to do with these alien god creatures. And then Dark World had a wholly different vibe, like very different vibe. Decent movie, always shat on for some reason.
Because
But
people are
then,
stupid.
you get Ragnarok.
The buddy cop.
Yeah, but then you get Ragnarok, which is a wholly different
Buddy
movie,
cop
a
movie.
completely
That's what
different
I'm
movie.
saying. The whole
Yeah,
you went from freaking some normal ass movie in the first one, and then by the third one it was fucking Beverly Hills Cop.
yeah.
Like it was a 48 hours. It was a comedy action movie.
And don't get me wrong, I love Ragnarok. I think it's a fantastic movie, and considering most of the script was ad-libbed, that's also fantastic. But it has changed who and what Thor is in that universe.
Because now Love and Thunder is going to be a direct break off of Ragnarok, and it's totally a different type movie. So those two will feel totally different to the first 2 movies.
Yeah. So Thor as a character has now completely changed due to the way it was written, and you don't necessarily see that change. I mean, you do and you don't. The very serious, I'm going to take my job seriously as Lord of Asgard, to doofy guy who throws lightning, is a very, very different character than when we started with. And the question is that due to just different people having control and rewriting the character, or did Marvel want to do that? You know,
okay, look.
But I'm not going into the deep end of that, but
I saw a very interesting video actually talking about the Thor and the Thor changes through the movies and stuff.
Yeah.
One, you can't just look at it as just the Thor movies. You have
to go through the rest of them. Yes.
You have to put the Avenger movies in the middle because it directly affects the story.
Yes, of course.
But the way the guy broke it down, I was like, holy shit, it makes a little more sense. Like, I know Bobby hates Ragnarok. He doesn't like the goofy slapstick stuff.
Yeah, of course.
You know, his favorite is the second one because it's darker and more serious in tone. Now,
and goofy when it needs to be.
When this guy broke it down, and what it is he broke it down like this. Like, you see like this, like teenage kid who's the star football player and all that stuff in the first one, really come like stepping into college and seeing what that level is like compared to high school. And then while in college, which would be like the second movie, he gets drafted to go to war. And that would be the Avengers and stuff like that.
Sure.
And he sees all this stuff happen. And then his mom dying, his dad dying, his brother dying at the beginning of everything. All this stuff, he ends up with PTSD.
That's true.
And the change, the goofy, schlocky, slapsticky stuff is his way of dealing with the depression and the PTSD. It's his outward reactions to shit he can't control, because every time he thinks about it and gets serious about it, it hits him like a ton of fucking bricks. And he pointed out one part very seriously was in Endgame.
Yeah.
he said, if you see the part where Thor is like, I'm the god, I'm the god of thunder, what the fuck ever. Let me put the glove on. I can handle it. I'm the
I know
fucking god.
exactly that part. Yes, I know what you're talking about.
And Tony's like, dude,
No,
you're
man,
not ready
you're
for
not
this.
ready for this. Yeah, I know that part.
If you see his face, how
Yeah.
crestfallen he is he realizes that outward appearance that he was putting off to try to not let people know he was dealing with shit, he just realized that they had seen through it.
Yeah.
And it hit them like a ton of fucking bricks.
Yeah, no,
Like,
I get that part. It's just that.
So the change in his character makes sense if you look at it as a whole. Individually, if you go Thor 1, Thor 2, Thor 3, you're like, holy fuck, this is 3 different damn Thors in 3 different damn movies. But if you look at it as a whole from an overview and follow that thread straight through, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I mean, I completely understand that line of thinking there. It's just that I think that Thor, from even up through Age of Ultron, is the same Thor, even despite
he's like a beefhead jock guy.
Well, yeah, but he's still very serious. But he's getting sillier, especially with the more time he spends on Earth. But he's still going back and forth between Asgard, just depending on what's necessary.
Because in Asgard, he has to be the prince. He has to stand with his shoulders back. He has to purport himself in a very specific kind of way because he's in direct lineage to be the king.
Yeah.
On Earth, he's not that. He gets to fuck off and goof around with his friends and tell jokes and fart and pee in public and stuff you can't do there.
Yeah, but also the way he talks, his mannerisms, everything very much change in Ragnarok specifically. And I'm not claiming it's a problem. I'm just saying it's one of the largest switches, and we're talking from the beginning of Ragnarok. But I do get what you're saying, especially after being thrown out to Sakaar, losing the hammer, losing his dad, knowing that actually the weird part is the PTSD argument makes sense in Infinity War and then into Endgame, but in Ragnarok it's not as bad because he's only lost his mom and his dad at that point, and the hammer, technically speaking. But
that part right there, it's the hammer.
Yeah,
is the trigger. But that's what changes him, because that's where he doesn't think he's worthy to be anything anymore. That's the PTSD point. Is that?
But then we're off on at least talking about this as a tangent, where him discovering that he didn't need the feather after all, Dumbo. Also, why was that not that was never quoted to him ever, which was weird. Somebody should have thrown that quote at him because he still wouldn't have understood it.
But then you had to bring in the crows.
I know. I just mean that they literally, because somebody else has used that.
Yeah.
What was that in? Supernatural. That's right. That quote came in Supernatural season 4, end of season 3.
I'm going to tell you something else. I've only ever watched Supernatural up to it was either season 2 or season 3, whichever one it was, where they beat Satan by the end of the season.
If they actually beat Satan, that was season 5.
Okay, I never watched anything past that.
Okay, well, that's fine. To me, that's the original self-contained story, so that's fine.
Yeah, you've beat the master of hell. There's nothing worse than that. But in the show, they make up reasons for things.
There's so much worse things that they actually end up unleashing.
I understand that.
But either way, the point is that the switch in Ragnarok was weird because he should have been able to stand on his own at the end of that movie, but then by the time we start Infinity War and then what happens with Thanos, then he completely changes and does something else entirely. That's been baked to death a million times. I'm not going to go off into it, but I think Marvel as a whole, modern Marvel, has really changed what sequels are. Because we used to get franchises that only dealt with trilogies and then you're done. But now we have a gigantic sprawling story across 20 movies. I guess now 24?
23, I think they got
23 or 24 movies technically now. And the thing is like, are they sequels to each other? If they're referencing the previous one. If it's not even in the same movie series.
That's an anthology.
Yeah, I get that. But it's like, you have to really change that up, because you'll have to take any, like, say, Iron Man 1 through 3. People will argue that 3 was the worst in there. They just hate the story, and I get that, especially Bobby. I get that. But then, like, the Thor movies, everybody says 2 is the worst. They're wrong. I would argue that 1 is technically the worst of the Thor
It's
trilogy.
definitely the most boring and hardest one to work through anymore.
And also they hadn't quite developed what Thor looked like, so he had the really light colored eyebrows and the darker beard, and it looked fucking weird. He looked so strange in that first movie comparatively.
Looked like he dunked his face into a bowl of bleach.
But he was also the beefiest we've seen Thor. He's more fit in the later movies, but he was beefy as fuck in that first movie.
He was definitely roided up in the first one, but he had leaned out and stuff by the other ones.
I'm drawing a blank. We got 3 Captain America movies. I always forget Civil War is technically Captain America, not Avengers. We know it's in Avengers 2.5, but it's Captain America 3. But I would say the Cap movies all got better over time. So I think when you have I'd
say they all stayed the same. I love the first one still just as much as I love the other ones. 3
different genres
becomes better, but 3 only becomes better if you look at it as part of the whole of the Avengers and the MCU.
True. Where 3 can't stand on its own. 3 can't stand on its own without Avengers.
2 is the best one, Winter Soldier.
Oh, Winter Soldier is the best. But this is also where
it's a self-contained story. You could cut those other 2 movies off. You could get rid of every other part of the MCU and just put out the Winter Soldier, and it'd still be a perfect movie.
I mean, you would still have to get have Fury and Natasha somehow, though. That'd be the only thing in
there. So you just have to have them in the movie. You don't have to explain how the fuck they got there.
Sure.
It's a comic movie.
I guess that's true.
Of course
well, you get Fury in 1, technically speaking, if you go to the end of it. But this is also where I'm saying is like, because I think sequels weren't always written back in the day to be one, like you were talking about, one continuous story from beginning to end. Sometimes they were just thrown in as a quick buck, and then. And I think that really does matter. And I think that's where modern day is getting a little bit better in sequels, because they're bothering to think out whole stories, except for Star Wars. Well, we had that whole argument last week.
Well, I'm going to say that one of the biggest changes between how they used to do them, between how they do them now, is they've shortened the time jumps. Usually, and what I mean by that is between the first movie and the second movie, now it's only days, weeks, or months in between those 2 movies.
Oh, you mean within universe? I was thinking in production time, because remember, sequels used to be like 3 years apart, 4 years apart.
Oh yeah, I'm saying in real life, getting to them too gets out faster. But what I'm saying is the reason why we can enjoy them more now is it doesn't, like Mike's conversation last week, it doesn't create such a huge gap where you go, okay, well, what the fuck they've been doing for the 8 years between movie 1 and movie 2, and that's where all of us nerds will get in there and start making up our own headcanon and start fighting and arguing with each other.
Or what's worse,
there's an 8 year fucking gap that they didn't tell us nothing about, so we can make up whatever we want.
Or what's worse, when they have it in a place that you can't see, like a book or something that fills in the gap, and you never read it.
Now all of a sudden it's only a 6 week gap, 6 month gap. That's a lot harder to make up an argument that you could solidify your foundation and stand on it and go, I'm absolutely right, you're absolutely wrong, because it's only 6 months.
That's the Sherlock problem.
But you see what I'm saying? Like, it's only been, and I'm not talking about release dates. I'm talking about in universe between the 2.
I am too, because going back to the Sherlock so the first season takes place over the course of maybe a year, maybe 9 months total. There's gaps that we never quite cover. Sometimes we do. However, between season 2 and season 3, we had a 2-year time skip because they had to go film The Hobbit. But the thing is, they brought that 2-year time skip into the universe, not just the thing. So it was 2 years in real life, and it was 2 years in the series, and it was a big gap.
And they explained what happened.
And they explained in those 2 years, technically speaking. Yeah, and they did it well. That's good storytelling, even when doing a sequel series instead of just a show, or a movie. So even in TV shows, that can matter too.
When you talk about Sherlock, we can call those movies, because like we said, each one of them is an hour and a half to 2 hours. Those are individual movies.
They are. And they're all in one continuity.
Believe me, I'm not saying anything bad about them. I love them.
Yeah. Well, I think the only time it gets wonky is in season 4, which is supposedly taking place minutes after season 3. But I mean, it's still fine. Doctor Who would have a much harder time talking about canonical sequels because of the massive time jumps in between that are a problem.
That's another one where I lose nerd points. I have never.
And that's fine. I don't expect.
I've watched old school Doctor Who, the guy with like the really brown, curly, tight hair,
Tom Baker,
with the long yellow and red.
That's Tom Baker.
thing.
That's everyone's doctor from the 80s, essentially.
I remember that one from when I was a kid because my friend's dad was a
That's
huge
the one I saw
sci-fi
too.
nerd.
Yep.
And I watched that, the one with the little robots with the little cones on this.
Yep. That was PBS.
So I saw that one.
That was PBS,
and then
actually.
Of the modern ones, the only one I've ever seen is that one episode with the mannequins, and I was like, nope,
that's
is
episode.
dumb.
That's episode 1.
All the way out.
That's episode 1 of New Who. By the way, they're every season of Modern Who is on HBO Plus, so you can actually go watch them if you want to.
HBO Max.
But
I won't be watching any of them.
Why?
I won't be watching any of them, and you can blame that fucking mannequin episode because that shit was fucking dumb, man. That shit was stupid.
Okay, first of all, the campiness kind of dumbs down after that first season, to be honest. Like that was a really campy episode, and there's a couple of them, and you do see the technology getting better over time. However, one thing that's great about Doctor Who is that they always have callbacks. So that mannequin episode, that's what we consider season 1 of New Who, even though it's one still 50-year-long story. Mm-hmm. There is a callback in season... Is it 5? Yeah, the end of season 5 has a callback all the way back to that episode.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. So, like, all those years on, season 5, which is at this point 2010 or 2011, goes back and references that very first episode. And there's nothing in between. There is no...
And then I saw one random episode.
Okay.
The one Charles Dickens one.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's also in that episode. That's also in that early season 2.
But I was actually I liked that episode. I thought that one was interesting.
They do a lot of period pieces like that, which are interesting.
I do like
also callbacks. There's callbacks to that episode also in season 4.
This show's been running for 50 fucking years. It's all callbacks to this.
Well, no, but the thing is, they don't have to. They never have to. And especially between different doctors, they don't have to do callbacks.
That's what I was just about to get to. I love the in-universe continuity of how it's really the same doctor, but a different doctor every time. Like that.
Oh, it's great.
He just has to change his looks. I think that's a smart way to play why you have a new fucking actor in there.
Yep. They wrote in the smartest way to have a continuous series with new actors playing the same part.
Now it's a girl playing them now, isn't it?
No.
The doctor's a girl?
No.
I thought it was one of the girls. Okay, so yes, it's bat nipples for you. Got it.
Yep.
But they even have a way to change genders with it.
That was always a thing. That was always a thing. They're literally time.
I'm saying it's awesome that they built that into the story.
Yeah, but the thing is that how do I put this? Literally how you put it. Chris Chibnall, who is the current showrunner, who's about to be gone, is the Joel Schumacher of Doctor Who.
Heard and understood. Say less, man. I get where you're coming
that's all
from.
I have to say.
Dude, he's adding all the neons and the bat nipples. I know exactly what you're saying.
And the reason I even say that to a much finer point, he's already said in questioning now that he's leaving, and actually an older director is coming back. Russell T Davies is coming back to the series after being gone for 15 years. He's coming back. He says he fully expects him to basically wipe that from canon. Literally, they're gonna be like, they're gonna have
the new doctor wake up and he just dreamt all that shit.
Yes, I think they will, because the reason why it sucks, and this I'm gonna call this the sequel problem as well, is because if you don't have a good person at the helm, even within a continuous storyline, and we know this through many other TV shows and movies as well, especially Star Wars, if you have somebody who just decides to either make up for something or to have a bias. In some ways, let's call it an SJW bias, because that's a lot of what the last 3 seasons of Doctor Who have been, is a lot of SJW woke nonsense. And I'm not against it as a whole, because Star Trek has always been preachy. Actually, Doctor Who has always been preachy, but they were very subtle. They put it in there, and they put it within context of the show, like an alien race who's dealing with slavery, and the slaves want to be free, that kind of stuff.
Well, Star Trek did it too, with
that's what I said.
The black and white people that didn't like the white and black
the binars,
people.
The binars.
Yeah,
I'm aware. And the thing is that they've always managed to do it in a contextual way, to put in modern problems in a contextual manner, to make you go, oh, hey. That's the thing.
It wasn't preachy, but it was there for you to
It was
learn
there
from
for
if
you
you
to think
take
about, especially in
it.
TNG. TNG was very good about that, whereas
Hmm.
DS9 was a different animal entirely. We'll say DS9 is a superior series of the modern Star Trek either way. But when it comes down to this, especially I was a hardcore Whovian since '06. So
What the fuck did you just say to me?
Whovians, that they're called.
What?
That is what Doctor Who fans are called. They're Whovians. You get Firefly has brown coats. Trek has Trekkers or Trekkies. Doctor Who is Whovians. Quit fucking laughing, you ass.
That's some Dr. Seuss sounding bullshit.
It technically is. Shut up. Either way, Whoville, that'd be funny. Dude,
Yeah,
okay, look, it's
I
gotta
get you
hold on,
married to
hold on,
who.
hold on. Considering there are people in the universe who have interacted with the Doctor and developed a kind of worship level for him, the fact that there has never been a Whoville technically within universe is funny. I would love for them
What?
to I would love for them to go
Please
to a
tell me that those people that
microscopic.
worship him in the show are called Whovians
They're
too,
not. They're
so that
not.
it's
They're not
fucking
that
meta that
meta.
you
They're
guys
not
call
that
him.
meta. But there have been a lot of people who investigate the Doctor. They just hear about him in whispers, or they have a minor interaction and they go, "What the fuck?" And then they just spend their lives trying to hunt down the Doctor and find out more. And usually there's
One of my one of my wife's good friends, her husband, they're both nerds. Her and her husband are nerds.
uh-huh.
Um, he, I guess, is a fucking movie. And I'm
Don't
gonna
fucking
fucking call him
laugh.
that next time I see him.
Do
Because
it.
like their gamer nerd room,
Uh-huh.
they actually made the doors look like the
The
fucking
TARDIS.
the TARDIS, so
Dude,
that you have to
no
walk
joke.
into the TARDIS to
I
go
was gonna
into
do
their
it.
nerd room.
I was going to do that to have a hidden door to our if we
Yeah.
have a house, have a hidden door that's the TARDIS, and you come in that way and it opens up into the bigger room.
So
But
I thought
okay,
that's cool. Like
so
I don't hate him for that. I think that's a great idea that
okay,
he did that.
so
But I'm gonna call him a Hoobie
no
and
no
see
no.
how he
I'm gonna
fucking
I'm
feels.
gonna give you the secret handshake. I'm gonna give you the secret handshake for this.
But I gotta grab his
Ask
dick
him.
and
No,
say
hold
Hoobie
on.
and Hoobie and.
No. Ask him. Do you ever skip 9? Just just that.
Are
Write
you a
it.
real Hoovian?
No.
Do you
Just
even
ask him.
skip 9, bro?
No, exactly. Is like, do you ever skip 9? And he'll probably look at you and go, "Fuck no, you don't skip 9."
Do you even skip 9, bro? I'm gonna fucking hit him with
No.
it.
Because that's the references because people often just start at David Tennant because
Mhm.
David Tennant was originally 10. Don't ask me why the numbers got all fucked up. It's a long story. It's a 50-year long story how the numbers got fucked up.
Hey man, I'm
There's
I'm
so
so stuck on Hoovian.
there's technically 12 doctors. Technically 12. 13.
Okay,
Oh, okay. Sorry. Got to include Jody.
13
Jody.
including bat nipples.
Yes, 13 including Bat
Mhm.
Nipples. Sorry, I'm going with 12 original because
I got you.
continuity problem because he's every Time Lord only gets 12 regenerations.
Okay.
But there have been 13 doctors and then you go, "Wait a minute, how do you get to 12 in the first place?" And then they had to insert a doctor who wasn't the doctor, long story. But they made him. They made it. That's why this fucked up the numbers. It actually fucked up everything past 9. No, it didn't. I'm sorry. It fucked up 9 and up. They inserted a new ninth Doctor, technically speaking, into the story that didn't exist before. But they give you a perfect reason as to why he's not the Doctor in the first place. It's a really good fucking storyline. You're laughing, but the point is
I'm stuck on Hoovians. You're being dead ass serious. I'm still
shut
stuck
up.
on that.
It's Hooligans. Well, I get it. It's a silly name, but it makes sense. Because
But that's it.
otherwise
Are
you
you a
call them
Hoovian, bro?
TARDISes.
I do that anyways. I'm like, you
Fucker.
talking about when people talk about Doctor Who? I'm like, you been
Yeah.
talking about the Tard in the TARDIS? I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. No, what you should say is you're like, "Look, my friend told me to never skip 9. I have no fucking clue what he's talking about." What does that mean? And
I
then
would say my
and
friend said 13 is better than all of the 12 put together.
well, the thing is, if he's real, he already knows which 13 I'm talking about. and you wouldn't be too wrong.
Well, then I'll have to fix it. Then I'll be like, he said the girl doctor is better than all the other doctors.
because actual 13 or not with the updated numbers is Peter Capaldi, and most people would argue Peter Capaldi was one of the best fucking modern doctors as it was. So,
Fucking
well, one of the best speeches done by the Doctor ever was his war speech, and that came from that era, and that was fucking fantastic. So that was one that was even today. I share that, especially with all the crazy shit that's going on nowadays. I know we're totally off on a completely different tangent from the sequel
Well,
thing,
this
but it
sounds
makes
like
sense.
bonus episode
Well,
stuff to me.
well, Doctor Who is actually the ultimate concept of a sequel because you do get sequels to yourself. Like
I was gonna say, technically, it's not a sequel;
it's
it's
like
one continual story.
it's one continual story. Well, the thing is, if you look at every season or every Doctor as a sequel to the previous one, so if you
It'd
just
be an
take the
anthology more than a sequel.
yes, I get that, but even then, most Doctors only last 2 to 3 seasons, just depending. Sometimes 4 at max. So you get a trilogy of their own stories, but actually, you break up the Doctor stories by either the individual arcs or story arcs in between, or by his companions, because sometimes one Doctor could have multiple companions over time, and not the Firefly companions.
Fucking Whovians.
But the point is like that is an interesting way to look at it, as if you look at every Doctor as a sequel to the previous Doctor, which it works that way. Actually, what's really funny is when multiple Doctors interact with each other, that's when it gets really fucking weird, because several times that are almost all canon. Some of them are just for TV specials for like raising money and shit like that. Like the 5 Doctor special was just a that sounds dirty, doesn't it? The 5 Doctor special.
But do they all go up there and you go, who's talking to who?
Yes. No, the weird part is whenever they do the Spider-Man meme, so they're all pointing at each other, like which one is which, like what the fuck. So they did the 5 Doctor special, and then more, which was not canon, but the 3 Doctors was canon. So it matters. Well, actually, I'll get off on this in a second, but the funniest thing that ever happened was one of those specials. It was for is it Red Nose Day? There's one of those. They do a thing that's for sick kids, and I forget exactly what it's called over there. It's like Red Nose Day for us, with kids with cancer and shit like that. So they did a special, and because there's more living Doctors now than there are dead ones. So they can play around with that whenever they want to, and actually bring some back. But in fact, one modern Doctor is now the son-in-law of a previous Doctor, so that's actually kind of funny.
It's the Purple Man is married to the daughter of the Doctor.
Yes.
See, I knew that.
Yeah.
Haha.
So David Tennant is married to, oh god damn it, Davidson?
The guy that I know, the brown-haired.
No, it's
right?
not. It's not Baker. It's not Tom Baker. It's fuck, I can't remember his name. He's the blonde one that had the fucking I think it was a leak on his fucking coat. Either way, and what was funny, technically speaking, is he's married to his quote-unquote daughter from the series. So either way, getting off on that. So they actually did a 2 Doctors crossover during the Matt Smith era, but the TARDIS landed inside itself.
The TARD was inside the TARD.
The TARDIS landed inside itself. So the TARDIS, yeah, exactly. So the TARDIS is its own dimension. It is. It's not just a spaceship. It's its own time and relative dimension in space. That's what it stands for. I got you.
So it opened up a pocket universe inside of a pocket universe.
Yes, but the weird thing is the TARDIS can land anywhere in space and time, because if you think of it as the TARDIS doesn't move, it just opens a portal to wherever. The door is merely a portal. The TARDIS doesn't move. Or if you think about Star Trek, I never thought of the fact that
I'm nerd enough to follow what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm picking up what you're dropping down.
Well, sometimes the TARDIS does move through space like a spaceship. Other times it's just appearing and disappearing. It just depends on the situation. Like when it dragged Earth halfway across the fucking universe to put it back in place, it was technically moving through space. Because time didn't matter there. It didn't drag it through time, just space. For the TARDIS to land inside itself is actually theoretically and physically impossible, but because TV show, they did it, and they were very fucking confused. So the older Doctor, who's standing there like, what the fuck, when he sees the TARDIS materialize inside itself, and then Matt Smith gets out of it, and then he's really fucking confused how he landed inside the TARDIS. Not to mention it landed inside an older version of itself. So the TARDIS, much like the Doctor, also regenerates. And one of the better episodes was whenever he got to actually talk to the TARDIS. So the TARDIS's soul got put into a human body. So he actually got to interact and talk with the TARDIS as a thing. He never considered it to technically be a
So
sentient.
the TARDIS was reanimated, so it was retardist.
No, shut up. So, anyways, the whenever he got to actually talk to the TARDIS, it was very interesting because the physical TARDIS got stolen, and they had to use remnants from a TARDIS junkyard to build a working machine to get to it. So one, they had to land in a moving TARDIS and not be found, and because he has the TARDIS's consciousness with him, she targets an older control room. She's like, so wait, what do you mean? Why do you have old control rooms? Oh, I archive all the control rooms. I'm up to, I forget what the number was. I think it was 16. And he's like, wait, you've only regenerated 9 times. He's like, oh, he's like, well, time doesn't mean anything to me. So she's archiving stuff that hasn't happened yet.
Nice.
So the TARDIS exists across all of time and space, including its own living
it's
reference.
A singularity.
It's a singularity. It lives. It exists across all of time and space, and it exists even within itself. But the funny part was that you can't archive something that hasn't happened yet. And she's like, well, maybe you can't. It's like the fact that it has archived something in the future.
It has happened to her. So
yeah. It has had. I forgot how you phrase it when it comes to time travel, but either way, everything has always happened.
Will already happen.
Yeah, it has already happened. Yes, exactly. It exists across.
I get that because I'm a huge Hitchhiker's Guide.
Yeah. That's even crazier. But are we ever gonna get speaking of sequels? Are we ever gonna get the sequel to that?
I kind of hope so.
I don't think we ever will.
Because a lot of people hate that movie, and that's because they don't Yep.
Who the fuck hates that movie?
Supposed Hitchhikers fans,
but not Whovians. Whovians love it.
I tried to explain to them, like, it is the fact that it's so different than what you were expecting makes it the perfect Hitchhiker's Guide to the movie. Because when Douglas Adams was alive, he would do that shit on purpose. Like, there's old pressings of on record LP where they recorded the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah.
And then there was also old BBC episodes of the Hitchhiker's Guide. And then there was his books. He purposely wrote each one to contradict
to be different. Yeah. So actually
he didn't want them to
I have a reference for this. Go if you ever watched movies with Mikey, he actually did a whole section on the Hitchhiker's Guide talking about how it came about altogether, and he does talk about how the differences between the radio play, the TV series, and the movie all differentiate and why for that reason. By the way, if you aren't subscribed to Film Joy and watch movies with Mikey and his video essays, you have to. He's so fucking good. He's
I'm a huge,
and he's a Texan, so I'm good with that too.
I'm a huge Hitchhiker, like how you were just blabbering on about Whovians and stuff. I'm whatever that is for Hitchhiker's Guide. Like I remember, and it's something stupid in reality, but to me it tickles me every time. I'm gonna tell you the story and it's gonna make me laugh.
Okay.
But
we're getting tight on time, so let's go ahead. Go.
Yeah, that's cool. That's what you call a bonus episode.
No need for a bonus this time, but we're pushing 3 already.
So I had the books when I was a kid, and they were the individual, like now I have the hardback compendium that has all of them in it, but when I was younger I had the ones that were separate.
Sure.
And it's the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, then it's the Restaurant at the End of the Universe, and underneath that it says Book 2 in the Exciting New Trilogy, and then it's then it's Life, the Universe, and Everything. And it
I couldn't remember the name.
Sorry. It's Restaurant at the End of the Universe, and then it's Solo. No, it is Life, the Universe, and Everything. And it says Book 3 in the Exciting New Trilogy. And then it's So Long and Thanks for All the Fish, and it says Book 4 in the Exciting New Trilogy.
I was going to say they're just keeping that playing, yeah.
Yeah. And then when they went to Mostly Harmless, they're like, book 5 in the amazing trilogy, the conclusion. Like, it is on the front of the book, and it would
Sequels.
just have me laughing just looking at the front of the book before I even got into the fucking book.
It's a sequel thing though.
It
Book
it
sequels.
was killed me. And before we get off of it, I have to talk about my one favorite
Sure.
part that to this day, like in my hardback version, it has that built-in, the little ribbon bookmark.
Yeah.
And I keep it marked to this day. I can go right now and flip it open, and it'll go straight to it. They break down because it's supposed to be an actual hitchhiker's guide.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
They break down travels, and like if you're looking at an old school travel guide, like money required, this, that, and another thing.
Yeah.
And there's this one part where it talks about population, and it gets into it goes. So we all know that the universe is infinite. And we know that within an infinite universe, there's an infinite number of planets. And within those infinite number of planets, there's a finite number of planets that can be inhabited by people. And anybody who knows basic math, any finite number divided by an infinite number is as close to zero as to be impossible. So anybody that you meet in your day-to-day passings is just a figment of your imagination. I totally fucked it up. That's not even a paraphrase, but the way he writes it in there, it cracks me up every fucking time.
And it's also British humor, which is very different. Yes. Like, and I love the whole narration of the movie. Honestly, makes that movie. What's happening on screen is sometimes not as important as what he's saying.
Yep. And okay, Alan Rickman as Marvin the paranoid android was fucking perfect.
Dude, okay, what was the side story of the whale dropping? And
okay, so
I forgot what it was. It's a weapon, right? It was a weapon that it fired and it turned into the whale.
No, it's
I forgot what
it was the infinite probability drive.
Yeah.
And the aliens fired, like in the book, I can't remember how it went down in the movie, but in the book, the aliens fired a missile at them.
And it turned the missile into the whale.
It turned it into a bowl of petunias, I think it was. Oh, and then the petunias turned into a whale. And like in the book, I don't remember how they did it in the movie. They might have did it like in a voiceover thing, but in the book, he's like, the petunia's like, who am I? What am I? Why am I here? And then immediately turned into a whale.
Yeah.
And then who am I? What am I? Why am I? Splat.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That was that. But that whole moment, I was like, and yeah, it was voiceover. He was giving the voiceover for what it was thinking. I was like, I had heard so much about this movie, and then I finally sat down and watched it. I was like, this is goddamn genius.
It's good.
I was like,
it's good.
This is goddamn genius. And then
it's good. And the books, they bolster each other. Like I years ago, actually, my friend's dad that I was telling you about used to watch Doctor Who. He actually had one of the, well, I guess he's an OG Whovian.
Yep.
But he actually had one of the vinyl pressings. Like, we used to listen to records a lot when I was a kid, and he had one of the vinyl pressings, and we got to listen to it. And it's although they contradict each other, they also complement each other.
Yeah.
And if you look at them as a whole and just do, even though it's the same basic story, there's enough differences in there that they add up and feed off of each other, and it's great. Yeah. I could go into a whole podcast just about Hitchhiker's Guide, so we can move on.
It's true. I mean, like, it's true. Like, we should do like just a favorite sci-fi franchise / thing in a future
Hitchhiker's
episode.
Guide opened me up to English comedy. Most people, their foray into English comedy is usually Benny Hill or Monty Python, or specifically The Holy Grail or Life of Brian. It's usually something along those lines.
Yeah.
But mine was definitely The Hitchhiker's Guide, and
mine, man. If we're talking about
favorite.
So, like, I got into some British comedy due to actual British comedians, but my first exposure, sci-fi comedy-wise, was Red Dwarf.
Nice.
Yeah. Hey, baby.
Very good one.
What you doing?
And then, like, I was so big in... Go ahead.
Being nosy? You about ready for bed? Okay. We're almost done.
And being that I was so big into it, I actually bought his autobiography and have read it multiple times. I've read other books of his other series that he had and stuff like that. I love Douglas Adams. Like he was huge. Like when I'm reading um his autobiography, like he was big in the world over there during that time. Like he was friends with Procol Harum that did Whiter Shade of Pale. He was big in Monty Python. He actually wrote a lot of those skits that we all love and laugh at now. There's a reason why they kind of feel funny for me, like in Hitchhiker's Guide, is he had his hands in that. He was friends with all of them.
That makes sense.
He was too late to join the troupe, but he was always hanging out with them and helping write episodes and stuff.
That makes a lot of sense realistically.
Yeah.
But yeah, and also older British comedy is different.
Yes. And one of my favorite quotes, and I actually told Bobby, I think, about this not too long ago. We were talking about something, is he was a very well known procrastinator. Like if you look at the copyrights in the Hitchhiker's Guide's books, there's years of gaps in between them.
Yeah.
And the fifth book, there's actually almost a 20-year gap between the fourth and fifth one, because he considered the story done at 4, but he said he kept getting all this mail from people. You didn't finish this story. You didn't finish that story. So he wrote the fifth book. That's why it feels so out. When you read it, it feels different than the other ones.
Yeah. Because
he wrote it out of anger. He was pissed at people telling him how he should have wrote his story, and he was tired of people asking him what happened to these people. So, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't read a 30-year-old fucking book that's part of a series that most people probably never even heard of. He literally wipes out the entire universe at the end of the book. Like he has the whole entire universe implode on itself, so that there's nothing. It's dead. Everything's done.
Yeah.
He said he did that shit. So if people wrote into him, he goes, I did give you an ending. Everything's done. There's nothing left to tell you.
That's the ultimate sequel. Fuck you. I ended everything.
You can't. There's no way you can spin off in anything, because there's nothing left to spin off into. He literally killed it because he was pissed at people writing to him.
I get that.
But he has one of my favorite quotes that because he was a procrastinator. And Bobby and I were talking about something. Bobby was talking about, he was saying he was procrastinating on something, or something was taking longer than it should have. And I believe it was Bobby I was talking to. His quote was, I love deadlines. I love the sound they make as they go whistling by while I'm sitting outside having a cup of tea. And
that's
perfect.
I don't know.
That's perfect.
At this point, who's a more famous procrastinator, him or George R.R. Martin?
Well, I like him more than George R.R. Martin, so I'm going to say him.
Well, the only reason I say that is because he technically finished his books.
Yeah. Well, here's the difference, though. He had gaps in between because he professed to be a procrastinator, but he was writing other stuff. He has series of books that he was writing in between too. George R.R. Martin's just not fucking doing it because he's out fucking off being Hollywood famous now. You know.
I know what's wrong.
He's writing other stuff.
Well, no, he did actually. That's the problem. I think he wrote 2 separate other stories in the Game of Thrones universe without finishing the actual storyline he's on.
Fucking dickhole.
Yeah, exactly.
And then here's another thing too: is I've heard George R.R. Martin, like the last 2 books. So it might be these ones you're talking about. Like he didn't really write them. He just kind of had guys in the room and just talked shit to them, and they typed it out, and he just signed his name to it.
Well, what's really funny, since they allowed the TV show to finish without finishing the books, he could technically see the fan backlash and go, okay, not doing that. And change what the book was going to do.
Taking episode 9, the whole entire book series.
Because technically speaking, he told them the ending point. They just were allowed to get there however they wanted. So if you guys are pissed about how Game of Thrones the show ended, well, that's how it was supposed to end.
No, he didn't. He didn't have it in that way.
No, he
said was Bran ended up on the throne. That's all
he said. Okay, look, he gave him the mile markers and just said, okay, get there however you need to, and then they had to speed through it realistically. So if you're mad about particular things, well, that's more or less how he wanted it to be. But he can change it in the books. But that's enough of that.
I see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots, and a sexy body full of tats.